Okay, it's a dark, gloomy, rainy day in the UK today. So let's get some dark matters. Talking about some dark matters. Yeah, I was supposed to be painting the front of the house today. Yesterday was prep work, masking off and cleaning the walls and getting all that kind of cobwebs and mold away from the walls. And today was supposed to be a nice, dry, cloudy day to paint the walls, but alas, it's been written off. Maybe tomorrow. Anyway, maybe tomorrow. I still got my walk in. I got my walk in. Bit of rain doesn't stop biology from getting his walks in. So let's talk about some articles. What was my first article? Dark Matters. And why do I talk about dark stuff sometimes? You kind of have to, because there is evil, right? Evil forces at work, right? Or dark forces, whatever you want to call it, actively working against your long-term happiness, right? So it's good to know it. It's kind of red pill stuff, right? Red pill stuff, and too much red pill content is not healthy, right? If you consume too much red pill content, it's not healthy. But you need to know some sort of background of what is actually occurring, the machinations at work, right? All geopolitical events are not random, and especially as I get older now, it's really easy for me to spot the interconnected timeline of events as they go back across years and if not decades, right? It's really it gets easier as you get older. When you're young, it's the events are too in your face. They're too have too much impact on your psyche for you to make heads or tails of what is actually going on. But as you get older, it's becomes quite simple, and this allows you to make better plans with your life, your career, your investments, and so on. So it's important to learn. It's important to know what's going on, right? So I find some articles that interest me, and hopefully should interest you, because it's good to read, right? But reading takes a bit of effort. So maybe somebody talking about it, just teasing out the main points will help. So here I'm talking about California, and the battle for America really is, what can I say? We're at a pivotal moment in time. And can we change the events of the power brokers or where they want to lead us? I don't know. It's really tough when you got most of the population just chugging along and kind of following orders, isn't it? Basically, leaning down, putting on masks when they don't need to put on masks, etc. Right? Closing down their businesses when they don't really need to close down the businesses, and so on. Right? So here we go. Share this article. So I found this maybe a week or two ago. Maybe, I didn't actually read the whole thing, but is this headline not enough to grab your attention? The battle for California is the battle for America, and I spent some time on the West Coast, and I've seen it progress from basically imagine rewinding the clock back to like 1940s, 1950s. It was the economic promised land, right? You had LA was full of orange orchards and beautiful greenery and just the basically opportunity, right? That's why it attracted so many people. The population growth of California has been incredible, but we're seeing exodus, right? Exodus of business owners, capital, and people who kind of experienced California how it was and seen it turn into what it has become. So a big beneficiary was Oregon, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, right? And now we've seen Texas kind of go to the fore last 7-8 years, right? So here we go. By Edward Ring. The Golden State's progressive feudalists have one fatal weakness. They are wrong. The fundamental premise they use to justify their actions are flawed. By now, this is a familiar story. California is a failed state. Thanks to years and progressive mismanagement and neglect, the cities are lawless and the forests are burning. Residents pay the highest prices in America for unreliable electricity. I've been there when electricity just goes out from rolling brownouts, they used to call it, right? Water is rationed. Homes are unaffordable. The public schools are a joke. All true. Anything you disagree with? Freeways are congested and crumbling. And if they're not still on lockdown or otherwise already destroyed by it, business owners contend with the most hostile regulatory climate in American history. To build a swimming pool in LA, try doing that. If you own a multi-million-dollar mansion and want to install a swimming pool, see how long it will take and how many hundreds of thousands of dollars it will take. You literally have to build like a doubled cement hull. You cannot let chlorine water out onto the dirt, right? In case of a trembler earthquake, right? Chlorinated water is the devil. So what used to cost only $25,000-$30,000 to build a swimming pool now costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. Look it up. In LA, SoCal. It is understandable that conservatives in the rest of the United States will be happy to write off California, but California is not writing off the rest of the United States. California is not writing off the rest of the United States. No, it does not. It wants to consume the rest of the United States. If you notice that when Californians move to other states, they want to inject and impart their views onto that state. So as they swarm into Austin, they take over that town. And their ideology, right? Green, progressive, etc. So it's like a locust, a swarm of locusts invading your state, right? And therein lies grave danger to American prosperity and freedom. What if California doesn't implode? A victim of its own political mismanagement. What if California instead completes its transformation into a successful plutocracy, ran by a clique or multi-billionaires in partnership of convenience? Does that sound like a great place to live? With environmental extremists and backed by the power of a unionized state bureaucracy. Yeah. You guys who work in the private sector, compare your wages to what a government worker in California earns. Right? Not producing any GDP, but hampering GDP, putting handbrakes on the economy. They're getting paid more to make your life miserable. What if the people who would resist this tyranny leave and the remaining population peacefully accepts universal basic income, subsidized housing? What if all it takes to be a feudal overlord in progressive California is to proffer to the proletarians a pittance of arms? Arms is like a biblical word, I believe. Or is it like from the Roman times? Arms, yeah. But basically like little tokens, right? Little pieces of bread, while reliably spouting incessant, blistering social justice and climate change rhetoric. You just need to look at Arnold Schwarzenegger and his progression as a young man into like a lefty vegan as he got older. But then he kind of realized at some point, well, being a vegan was being so harmful to his body that I think he kind of eats meat again. Why won't that work? After all, it works so far. And it's amazing. Arnie grew up in Austria. Like, basically, used to compete in Germany in bodybuilding contests. He should know what leftist history pretty well, but
seems like he just, became a tool, right, in this whole Hollywood thing. Or maybe he actually did believe what he was talking about. Who knows? That lefty kind of incessant spouting, like the author says, is so brainwashing. Even somebody like Arnie got suckered into it. Why won't that work? After all, it's worked so far. California has the most progressive electorate in America. Progressive meaning Democrat voting, right? Not because of California's regulatory state, but in spite of it, California is by far the wealthiest and most influential state in America. With 40 million people, a diverse economy, and a gross domestic product of 3.2 trillion. I believe that is equal to United Kingdom, or slightly less or slightly more. California is almost a nation unto itself, and the progressive zealots who run California have been acting like an independent nation with the avowed goal of transforming the entire United States to match its image. I mean, every major American city is all left. Every major American city is being run into the ground. Chicago, Seattle, Portland, New York is hardcore Democrat, right? It's kind of survived so far because of Wall Street, but it's property values. But you've seen a lot of people leave, right? Maybe that's by what they want, right? Getting those wealthy residents out and importing a bunch of, I don't know, lefty young millennials, new zillennials, right? Get them into the office spaces, which are being converted into little pods, pod life people. With 40 million people, a diverse economy. Yep. California is almost a nation unto itself, and the progressive zealots who run California. Okay, what happens in California matters to the rest of the United States because California's internal market is huge. Its political and financial influence is powerful, and it rallies political allies throughout the US. If what California does to transform its own culture and economy isn't stopped, the rest of the US will fall into line. The result will be a comprehensive reinvention of society in all areas, political, economic, and cultural. The difficult reality that conservative Americans must accept is that while California may be a failed state by the standards middle America has come to take for granted, California may not fail by its own standards. The society California is building may prove viable, even if it is hideous to contemplate and morally wrong. It may prove viable even though the alternatives that it displaces offer more prosperity and freedom to more people. It amounts to an all-powerful tech plutocracy ruling over a micromanaged dependent population, with rationing and redistribution in the name of social justice and saving the planet. This model, which is a modern form of feudalism, may work not merely because it is politically and economically sustainable despite its many shortcomings, nor merely because it offers more power and profit to its handful of resident billionaires who already possess obscene levels of power and wealth. These reasons don't fully explain the popularity of progressive feudalism. There's one more piece in the puzzle. The progressive model also becomes more viable because of a moral narrative that is flawed but nonetheless compelling. We live in an inherently oppressive society, so we must reduce the privileged middle class, that's you guys in the middle, in the interest of social justice. We live in an era of limited resources and a stressed planet, so we must reduce everyone's standard of living. Countering that narrative is the mission that must be sent into California. The misery that Californians have condemned themselves to live is not a moral choice. They are victims of a con job. Absolutely. Agree entirely with what he is saying. What follows are detailed examples of what is happening in California. These examples are selected based on the level of transformative impact they are having, as well as their potential to be rolled into the rest of the United States. But this compendium, while lengthy, only scratches the surface. Oh boy, this might be a 2-3 part video. 11 minutes in. Yeah. We'll see how we go. The labor movement is the glue. At the forefront of California's populist progressive movement is organized labor, right? Simulating the progressive battle cries on all the predictable topics: race, gender, climate change. California's labor movement wields both their billions in dues revenues and a perpetually mobilized field army that reaches into every locale and institution. And in a major escalation of a battle soon to rage across America, California unions have taken on independent contractors. Wow. Holy moly. Sailing through the state legislature and signed by Governor Gavin Newsom. Is he still in charge? Jesus Christ. In September 2019, AB 5 outlawed most forms of individual independent contracting. Holy cow. And threw most of the arrests into legal ambiguity. They love throwing that ambiguity on you, right? Leaving you kind of off balance, right? Not sure what moves to make, right? Whilst the contractors under the unions are racing ahead of you, right? While aimed at rideshare drivers on Uber and Lyft platforms, it affected all businesses that use independent contractors. Oh, okay, I got you. From nail salons, graphic artists, to thousands of badly needed nurses and other healthcare professionals. The most powerful injured parties, led by Uber and Lyft, have funded a ballot initiative that will repeal AB 5 for their specific industries. Yeah, they will sort themselves out, of course. But small businesses, including sole proprietors, are out of luck. There's been a huge raging battle against independent businesses, right? Small businesses. That used to be the backbone of America, right? They're getting crushed during this COVID stuff. The move to ban independent contractors has now gone national, with Biden and Harris endorsing the policy. The Biden campaign is even running ads against the Uber and Lyft ballot proposition. Now, the gig economy giants are trying to gut the law and exempt the workers. It is unacceptable. The consequences of outlawing most forms of independent contracting are obvious and disgraceful. Within realistic constraints, people should be allowed to exchange services for money without having to become employees of a company, right? There's one saving grace of crypto, right? The peer-to-peer economy, right? That such a basic expression of freedom should come under attack illustrates the gravity of the fight we're in. The motivation for this law is equally obvious and disgraceful. If people can be herded into companies as employees, then they can be organized and put under union representation. It's worth re-examining exactly what unions in California represent. Rather than leaving it at that, California's unions exist primarily in the public sector, where the negotiations, in quotes, are with politicians whose campaigns they've bankrolled, and their wage and benefit demands are paid for by taxes, not by businesses operating in a competitive environment. Talking about government workers here, right? Very, very shady stuff. And while unions may still play a vital role in the private sector, hardly ever, it's fair to wonder why their political agenda, open borders in particular, is a goal that is shared by the tech billionaires and corporations these unions supposedly oppose. Why the contradiction? The answer to this helps explain the alliance between corporations and unions, which on the surface seems contradictory. First, the central gravity of union power in the United States, and this is especially the case in California, now rests with the public sector. And why wouldn't public sector unions want open borders? And moreover, why wouldn't they want unrestricted immigration with no regard for the ability of immigrants to speak English, bring useful skills, and assimilate? The more numerous and independent American immigrants are, the more numerous and expansive the roster of government employees necessary to assist them in their new country. Ooh. The public schools of Los Angeles, to cite an obvious example, receive revenue based on how many students are enrolled. The more immigrants that arrive, the more revenue these school districts collect. And the more unionized dues paying members of the teachers' unions have to be hired. Yeah, Californian teachers get paid a buco bucks, a lot of money, working part-time. If these students have poor education in the nations they're arriving from, and if these students lack English language skills, then the public schools of Los Angeles will qualify to collect even more revenue and hire even more specialized staff in order to better assist the special needs of these students. In most areas of public service, the more dependent and difficult to assimilate immigrants are, the more public services are required. It's like a negative loop, right? Or expansionary loop of the government feeding on itself. Social workers, welfare administrators, police, probation officers, translators, and assorted bureaucrats. More generally, the more the population grows through immigration, the more government will grow, benefiting government unions. Population growth, of course, also fulfills corporate objectives, expanding the labor force and driving down wages. Immigrants will accept low pay wages that a native Californian will just laugh at, right? Let's acknowledge that's how you kind of want a closed loop state, a closed economy. A closed economy allows prosperity. The book I read, The Richest Man in Babylon. Babylon was the richest city in the whole of the world at the time, right? And it was created in the Euphrates Basin, just dirt, dry, nothing going on, but a closed loop city with great, with run really well, created prosperity out of nothing, right? And you go back to Italy, right? Rome, same kind of deal, right? Let's acknowledge, but perhaps even more significant, a larger population simply creates larger critical mass of consumers. In the broadest, most macroeconomic sense of the term, a consumer is any living resident of a nation. Even someone totally dependent on the government, they still require food, medical care, and shelter. They still buy products. And someone, a private sector government contractor, as often as a government agency, will be remunerated to fill those requirements. This still doesn't explain why private sector unions would favor open borders, but here ideology and opportunism align synergistically to provide the answer. On one hand, a leftist narrative of anti-racism, replacing the oppressors, displacing and overthrowing the colonizers, etc., provide an ideological rationale for even private sector unions to agitate for open borders. And the internationalist perspective of these union leaders, where increasingly their concern is not for the American worker, but for the workers of the world, also gives them cover to call for open borders, even though that increases the supply of labor and drives down wages. Many of them simply don't understand the realities of supply and demand, and are fully committed to an economic dream or socialist redistribution. But for those who do recognize economic reality, there is another more practical motive. The worse off the workers are in their bargaining units and in the economy generally, the more they're likely to be to join a union in an attempt to better their circumstances. In any case, by far the most powerful unions in California are public sector unions, for which policy and program failures constitute success. Because to address the failures, they can agitate for more policies and more programs. This agenda is playing out in democratic cities and states across America. Let's finish this. Unionizing police and firefighters. California state legislature doesn't have to do anything to unionize public employees, including police and firefighters. That's already an established fact. But if California Democrats have anything to say about it, unionized public safety is coming to America. Unionized public safety, wow. California's 45 Democrats in the US Congress, by far the most numerous and influential coalition of Democrats from any state, have introduced federal legislation to that effect. Legislation to unionize public safety, misleadingly dubbed the Public Safety Employee Corporation Act. Wow, it's a long one. Authored by LA area Representative Karen Bass and co-sponsored by 201 other Democrat representatives, including all of California's Democrat House members, would impose exclusive California-style collective bargaining units for police and emergency services to the roughly 20 states that don't already have it. See this kind of mass rollout, right? The consequences of unionized law enforcement and firefighting are many and dire. I thought we were supposed to be defunding the police. Every year, these unions will collect hundreds of millions in dues, and they will use a significant percentage of that money on political spending to flip battleground states from purple, where, they're kind of going back and forth between Republican and Democrat every election, those purple states, to blue, complete takeover, right? This bill would also require union bargaining over police officers' wages, hours, and terms and conditions of employment, increasing costs to taxpayers. You can have a private law enforcement, right? Yeah, you definitely could. Go to a high-end residential, not unit, a development, right? They don't hire unionize a police force to protect their residents. They hire security guards, right? At low cost, maybe 2 or 3, maybe then one kind of highly skilled security officer, right? Citizens arrest is a thing, right? If a crime is being committed, you have the power to stop that crime, right? And if you're well trained, maybe you have martial arts skills, MMA, or you're ex-veteran, you got ability to, protect your residents, right? These costs are not trivial. Police and firefighter pay and benefits are breaking the budgets of cities and counties across California. The average sheriff in a Californian county in 2019 earned pay and benefits of $158,000. Yeah, public police and sheriffs and CHP, right? They do this weird thing where they get in early. Often these guys are high school grads, right? They might go to police academy, whatever, but they will retire early, I believe at 50. Collect a full pension and then re-enroll in like some sort of admin position. So now they're collecting a full-time wage, and now from the pension, on top of a secondary salary as well. So these guys are super greedy. $158,000. That's average, and that's on the low side compared to other categories of public safety. A police chief or fire chief, wow, these guys are earning like close to 300-400 grand, I imagine. That's average, right? For example, on average, a police officer in a Californian city in 2019 earned pay and benefits of $176,000. Firefighters earned on average much more in Californian counties in 2019, 214 grand. 214 grand. In California cities, also 214 grand. Wow. Oh, counties, I'm sorry. These averages, if anything, are understating the reality insofar as they don't take into account the increased costs of pre-funding their pension benefits. These guys have golden Cadillac style pensions, right? Full pay when they retire, full pay. Sometimes even more, like 110% if they like put in enough years, right? If there isn't another bull market, nor do they take into account the full cost of pre-funding their retirement healthcare, most reasonable people agree that it's very important to support police and firefighters and to pay them well. But these averages are so high, they're often met with disbelief. I know these numbers, so not for me. They are unaffordable, compromising the ability to maintain adequate forces and taking funding away from other vital public services. It's like the Blob, isn't it? You remember that movie? It just kind of grows and grows and consumes everything. They are a direct result of unionization. And if unionizing is not to save money, since clearly the opposite has happened, then what is the motivation? In contrast to Democrats' stated aims, unionizing police departments per this legislation would exacerbate systemic police violence by protecting bad cops from accountability. Boom. So why support it? Because government unions want it. Passing the bill allows Democrats to expand the revenue of the unions that quietly fund their campaigns. Half an hour. Okay, I'll break this up. This is a good, really good article, right? It's very detailed. I'm glad he's did the work putting it all together. Yeah, end of part 1. I'll come back to this over the next few days. Cool. Peace.